Welcome to Let's Buy Property. I'm your host, Tony Amato, co-founder and director of Amato Property, a buyer's agency focused on helping home buyers find their perfect property in the Newcastle and Lake Macquarie region of New South Wales and investors across Australia. So whether you're looking to invest, relocate to this amazing part of Australia, or just get a feel for the local market, you've come to the right place. Renee Seymour, thanks for joining us for a chat today.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful to join you.
Yeah, look, my pleasure. Now, I thought we'd kick off with just a bit of an introduction. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about yourself and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So my sister actually started the business over probably 16 years ago. She started in a law practice, and she didn't really like the criminal law or litigation. So she found that property law was something that everyone was excited with and kind of didn't understand the process. So that's kind of where the business started. And then I jumped on board when within the first kind of year she opened. So I took on more of the marketing and finished my degree. And we, basically seen a miss in the market. And that's probably why we started Ezy Step, is because we wanted to have that hold the hand nature. We were first home buyers ourselves. We didn't know the process. We bought something that had illegal structures. There was boundary encroachments. We didn't understand contracts or anything like that. And we pretty much, didn't know anything. And that's kind of where we wanted to make sure that everyone kind of knew exactly what to do. And we have adopted the sense of hold that hand nature and provide that information to our client to ensure that everyone kind of knows that process about property law and what to do when purchasing and selling.
It's amazing how like that personal experience motivates so many people to go out there and do something to make a difference for other people, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And for first home buyers, we kind of missed out on first home buyers exemption, and we brought something illegal, so which obviously we still have that property, but that now is going to have a domino effect. But having that education to our client and giving that forefront of information that had they have known that, they probably either would have pursued or renegotiated or have thought about the property a little bit more than before signing the contract.
Yes.
Or pursuing the contract, including that sole sign up. So that education process about understanding their contract obligations, either buying or selling, and what their commitment to that contract would be, and if they don't fulfill that obligation, what the ramifications would be. So
Gotcha. Excellent. And so with your business, is it just the conveyancing, or is there other aspects of property law that you guys take care of as well?
I mean, we do a lot of family transfers, etc., and we'll step in kind of when there is like a notice of death or a registration of a power of attorney, or those kind of things. But more predominantly, we just focus on buying and selling. That's kind of what we love to do. More about its excitement for our client, and there's an end goal. It's a huge investment, so we just kind of want to help them through that process.
Okay, so leading on to that, I guess, can you explain what conveyancing is and why it is such an important part of the property transaction process?
Yeah, of course. So property law or conveyancing is basically everything to do with buying and selling a property and transacting on transferring the property from one ownership to the other. And that process is quite complicated. A lot of people don't understand the back end of what we do, but we try and take that to a simple method that everyone kind of just signs on the dotted line, and we kind of do that all for them. So it's about your boundaries, searches, inquiries, making sure the contract fits the terms of the client and the property. We make sure that when we're preparing the contracts that they're either disclosing illegal building works or disclosing kind of something that should be under Section 52, which is something that should have been disclosed by the vendor, and making sure that the process from start to finish, either buying a property, making sure that they're aware of the due diligence they need to do. So having that formal loan approval in place, doing the searches and inquiries about your pest and building, and making sure that you understand the contract terms, and that you're in a position, but before we go into a binding contract and that sold sign goes up, you're aware of the commitment to that contract. And then throughout the sold sign through to settlement, we do all of your stamping, the exemptions of the first home buyer assistance scheme, any of the clear of the land tax, foreign residents, adjustments of the property related debt, so council rates, water rates, the change of ownership. So there's a whole heap of things that happen on the back end. And that's what we do, is making sure that anything property related is fixed up and debts are cleared before we transfer the ownership of the property.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's such a complex space as well, and we rely on people like yourself to make sure that everything's lined up rather with our clients as well, rather than trying to do it ourselves. Do
Yeah.
people do that side of things themselves at all, or is it possible?
It is possible if you are aware of kind of the process, but when you get to the end, you have to employ like a settlement clerk, because we all transact on PEXA now, which is a it's an Australian-wide platform. It's an electronic platform where we finalise the PEXA or the settlement in the transaction. So sale, purchases, everything has to go through PEXA. So it's a Property Exchange Australia, and that's where we transact online now. Yeah. So no paper checks, no bank checks, nothing anymore. It's all done electronically.
Is that a recent change? Because, like, I mean, PEX has been around for a while, but
Yeah.
the electronic sort of platform a recent change?
It is in not in New South Wales. It is in Victoria and Queensland and WA. They're all just coming on the PEXA platform now in the last couple of years. But New South Wales has been doing it for quite a long time. We were one of the first couple of offices that were trialing the PEXA platform, which is good.
Okay.
Jamie Lee's on the PEXA board, so she has a stance on kind of what's happening on the back end.
How it works and what's going on. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So can you sort of walk us through the key stages of that conveyancing process? You know, what does it look like sort of from start to finish?
Yeah. So for a purchase, we highly encourage that when you are looking at the property, that you speaking to those experts before you kind of start offering. So making sure that you're qualifying your loan approval and making sure that that capacity for the funding the property is there, and it's going to not have any hesitation of approval. I think the biggest misconception is, oh, I've earned this much money, but they don't take into account of how much debts they may have, and then they may not qualify for the amount that they're expecting to get approval. So making sure that you're getting that pre-approval before you are starting to search for that property is probably key. Pest and building and making sure that those searches and inquiries are done is paramount, because when we go into a binding contract, it's something that you'll go into a contract accepting the property as is. Most of the contracts are accepting the property as is in its present state and condition and state of repair, including any defects, latent or patent. So it's really important that all of those searches, as council inquiries, contract reviews and everything before we go into a binding contract is done. And that's what we do. We do that all on the back end. So we'll make sure that they're formalising finance, that they've got the pest and building booked in. And I think you work and maybe do it all in your clients as well. But just making sure that we're dotting those I's and crossing those T's before we get that sold sign up, to make sure that they're 100% committed to this property.
Absolutely. I mean, with our clients, we make sure that they've got at least a pre-approval in place, because otherwise you can't even go looking at properties if you don't know exactly what your budget and what you can afford.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then the pest and building, I mean, that's absolute key as well, especially in that, I guess, that cooling off period. We try to get that done to make sure that everything's looking good.
Yeah. So we'll do free contract reviews for our client, just to make sure that there is kind of no red flags. There's a green light for them to kind of pursue those negotiations. So if they were looking at putting like a granny flat or a pool or something, and there was a major easement running at the rear or somewhere where they were wanting to do that, that prevents them from the future use, or if there was a disclosure of illegal building works and they're hoping not to worry about any issues with the property, just making sure that those conditions are not highlighted. Or if it's subject to a notice of like a probate, so that it's subject to a 6-month probate clause, that they're not wanting a quick settlement, that would obviously prevent that from happening. So it's just making sure that there is no kind of immediate concerns, and it'll just take us a quick review just to make sure, yep, no problem, to
Yeah.
proceed with that offer and acceptance. And then the rest can be done in the cool off period. There's no hesitations with that.
Yeah, fantastic. And that, I mean, that free contract review is fantastic offering or service, I guess, because we have clients who come along with their own conveyances, and it's getting more and more common that actually people are charging per review of contract.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so to have it as a free service is, it's fantastic for buyers.
Yeah, it's just more, yeah, just for making sure that people aren't going to put their money down and then find out that they're going to be losing a holding deposit because they haven't had knowledge of that, and the agent obviously didn't disclose that, or they weren't aware of that, etc., for the boundary. And sometimes the agents won't be aware that there is a major easement running through that rear. So that's where we come in and just make sure that they're aware of it, or even if there's a road realignment and there's a proposed road widening that's going to take 15 meters of the front part of the property in 5 years, that's something that we would look for. So that's something that it is more just for you as a buyer's agent, and also for your client's peace of mind that there's no issues moving forward and they're not going to lose value of the property.
Absolutely. And look, we try and look for all those easements and, road widenings as well, but it's great that you guys come in and have that second look at it as well. And yeah, it's fantastic. It's fantastic service. So on the flip side, like when you're representing the seller, I'm guessing it's still sort of similar. You're getting all the titles in place, you're doing the searches. Is there much difference between the way you act, I guess, except from representing the seller rather than the buyer?
When we take instructions, it's quite a comprehensive list of instructions that we would take through. So it's basically going through when they purchase the property, what have they done to the property? Do we need to disclose anything in the contract? Have they, sunk a pool below the surface of the land, or have they got active termites under and that we need to disclose? Or if there's major issues, like if there's been maybe a probate that we need to be aware of and they're acting for a deceased estate. There's a whole heap of things that we would take through. It probably takes about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the particulars of the property, to run through instructions as to what they've done, what's included, what's excluded, if there's a debt on the property, and then there's a statutory warranties and requisitions that we would ask them. And then that would then follow through with multiple things as far as how we disclose and finalize a contract. So, yeah.
Okay, excellent. So when it comes to settlement day, what's your role on settlement day? Because it always seems to be this crazy day where last minute things are getting done. I mean, what's your role during that sort of period on the settlement?
So yeah, settlement is crunch time. So we basically want to make sure that we are getting the clients to do your final inspection and that there's no issues with the property and its condition. So essentially we just need to educate, and we normally do that when we do your contract review, is to make sure that you accept the property in its present state and condition at the time of exchange, and it's going to be like that at the time of settlement. It's really important that clients are aware that with a contract of sale, there is no professional clean, although it would be nice for the vendor to do that. It's something that it's out of the vendor's goodwill. They just need to make sure it's clean, tidy, and vacant, and that it's not hindering the enjoyment of the property. So making sure that all of the inclusions that are on the front page of the contract are excluded there, and anything that's not on the front page of the contract is excluded from the contract. And the property, so free from any rubbish, debris, building materials, clean, tidy, and if it is, and there's no damage from the date of exchange, then we settle. Finances, obviously, we would organise on the back end to make sure that we've got an office policy that we're 2 weeks in front. So we'll always prepare 10 days outside of settlement what they are coming from the bank and what we need from them, or if they've got cash that it's in our trust account, so that there's no last minute run around of I need another $20,000 from you, we're short for settlement. So it's really just making sure that there's no last minute unwanted stresses, which can happen obviously on the day of settlement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that 10-day leading time is so important.
Yeah.
It's interesting that there's no professional clean associated when you're purchasing a property.
You've got to negotiate that for your clients.
Yeah, I was going to, yeah, yeah. I was going to ask with, I understand there's no professional clean inside and stuff, but what about like things like gutters and, if there's, say you find a handrail that's not up to code, is that something that you that you would negotiate as between the conveyancers, between the solicitors on, or
In the pre-exchange, yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So if it's with the age of the property, so if it's an older property and that at the time of that build, that handrail met the code, then you really don't have much wiggle room. It's just if it was a new extension, new addition, and that extension did not meet the code, then you do have a little bit more of a room for movement. But that is something that you should have taken into consideration of purchase price. That is an older property, and if we are needing to bring it up to code, we may need to do this, this, and this. So that's why we would offer that to the vendor. And it's really just about educating the buyer and the vendor as to what those things would do. Yeah, so we certainly would negotiate if they did want a professional clean. We do insert conditions in the contract that the vendor will warrant to maintain the property, mow the lawns, clean and make sure they clean the dishwasher, grill and oven. There is a condition that we propose, but in accordance with the contract, as long as it's clean, tidy. Your cleanliness might be very different to my cleanliness, so it's really important about if they're happy with the time of the clean at the time of exchange, that's probably the condition that it's going to be like at the time of settlement.
So I mean, part of your role is obviously looking at those contracts and seeing if there's any issues. What are some of the common issues that you come across during the whole process of conveyancing, I guess, and how do you handle those?
Yeah, of course. So there's a lot of conditions in the contract that the solicitors are now putting into, or conveyancers are now putting into the contract, is that there's extensions of cool off. So if you're thinking that your finance is going to take 10 days, you will need to make sure that you're negotiating a 10-day cool off period. Most of the contracts, especially in the Hunter Lake Macquarie area, is charging between $150 to $550 for requesting an extension of a cool off period. So that's another out-of-pocket expense that the purchaser may not be taking into consideration. That definitely is something that would be enforced if they were to request an extension. Disclosure of illegal building works or disclosure of works in the property would also be something that they need to be taking, like we would need to review and obviously let them know that the vendors disclose that there's a deck in there. And then just making sure that if it is in a flood zone, making sure that you're obtaining those quotes, or if it's in a bushfire rating, making sure that they're aware of the bow rating because that'll increase the build costs. Making sure where the sewer and everything is running in. So anything as part of negotiations, we would do on their behalf. So if there's issues with pest and building, or anything like that, we would start negotiations in relation to that as well. So if there's active termites in a tree, instead of going down as far as taking a reduction, we would request a works condition of settlement, so the vendor warrants that on or before completion they'll eradicate the nest. And so instead of starting to go in and upsetting the vendor, because the vendor probably not even aware of some of the issues that these pest and building inspectors pick up, they might not be aware of that the failed membrane has started. So we'll negotiate all of those terms before we go into a contract.
Excellent. And is it common that you come across something that is, I guess, serious enough to actually stop the transaction?
We've had one that they've sunk a pool, and it's a full concrete pool below the surface of the land, and they were trying to build another pool there. That would have actually been something that would have cost them thousands and thousands to get that off, demolish the thing and then put it back in, and they would have to go through a process for that. Legal extensions, had they have known that, they probably would have taken that into consideration and they've built a legal conversion of a granny flat. It's more just of knowledge that if they're happy to do that, I mean 99% of the properties are probably illegal in some way anyway. At some point. That's not a deal breaker for a lot of clients, but they need to know these things to make sure that they're aware that this is approved, but this might not be approved. There's not really any major deal breakers, except if the vendor's kind of in bankruptcy and we kind of declare that there's multiple caveats in there and there's a mortgage on there and you've sold at 750, but there's not enough money to pay out the debt, then that's probably a deal breaker because they wouldn't be able to provide a clear title, so therefore there was no point of moving across with a deal. We have had to rescind on a matter relating to that because the vendor couldn't provide a clear debt, clear title and clear the debts. There's a lot of issues that we're dealing with on the back end.
Any particular sort of red flags that stand out? I did an interview with a pest and building inspector recently, and we talked about red flags. And he was sort of said, well, there's no real red flags. You just it's just knowledge, you understand
Yeah,
what's
that's right. Yeah.
with it. Is it the same in sort of the conveyancing
I
sort
think
of?
Yeah, I think so. I think it more is just about the education and knowledge, because a lot of people that I might be okay with an illegal extension because I'm going to do a DA on that anyway, and we're going to go up or out or whatever. So, but other people that might be a huge deal breaker because those 2 bedrooms are habitable spaces and it's not it's not approved to that, and they've done a full extension, double the size of the property, and it's not approved. So there's an order, to demolish or rectify. We have got to a property down on the Central Coast where we were a week outside of settlement and the purchaser applied for a BIC, so a building information certificate. And the carport in the front part of the house and the back part of the house was not approved, and council ordered a demolition order to take half the house that they'd extended on. So that actually, yeah, so that's a big red flag, because the purchaser proceeded on that, thinking that that was approved, issued an order, and then they lost half the house. Because it was substantially damaged, because the order would take that, then that would allow room out of the contract because it's not in the same condition as it was at the time of exchange, and therefore value has been lost. So, yeah.
So what prompted that request to get that certificate, I guess? What was there?
It's just, we would normally see, it's been like, we'll go through council records and see that may have been on the sewer diagram or on the original plans that we can see was only approved for a 2-bedroom, and now it's a 5-bedroom house. We would then say that might not be approved. What do you want to do about it? We can issue a BIC. And if you do that before completion, then it's, the purchaser actually has to take that on in some of the contracts, and it just depends on what the conditions are. But yeah, there is there's issues.
Because I guess that's something that should have really been disclosed before the sale, before contract.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So there was a non-disclosure there as well. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So with there's lots of conveyancers around. So for someone who's looking to hire a conveyancer, I'm sure they're not all the same. They're not all equal. What should people consider to ensure that they're getting the right professional to do the job for them?
Just making sure that their communication is key point. So making sure that you're able to communicate with the conveyancer exactly what you're after, what you're looking for as far as a purchase, and making sure that they're doing all of those searches and inquiries, that you've got all of the information to take into consideration. There's a lot of conveyancers that may not do as much due diligence as another. So it's really making sure that they're working for you, and that they disclose the cost kind of upfront, because a lot of conveyancers will say, well, our legal fee is $990, but the disbursements might be $880, and they're expecting only pay $990. So it's just making sure that you get that cost disclosure straight up. A lot of things, and things are expensive these days, and if they're not taking into consideration they're going to be up for another $1,000, that might be something that might be a deal breaker for them. But more for, it's just more about that education, and are they going to be working for them, and do they have the capacity to take the matter on, is the biggest thing. Is because if you don't have someone that's able to give you the time to be able to do that transaction, then we're not doing the job right. So just making sure that you're qualifying that person.
I think, like you said, the communication is so important. I mean, we've dealt with other conveyancers in the past where you just couldn't get hold of them for days, and it is so frustrating for everybody involved. So, I mean, communication is key, and just being transparent about those fees and upfront.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So what would you say sets Ezy Step Conveyancing apart from other firms?
Yeah, I guess we set up, we were kind of the first ones to say fixed fee, nothing payable up front. So I guess for us, we are around a blue-collared market who you obviously look after all kind of their pennies. And so for us, another out-of-pocket expense when they purchase a property, when they already have to outlay either a valuation, a pest and building, a contracted sale when you're acting for the vendor, we take that kind of stress out of them, that they're not up for another cost to review a contract or to pay a deposit down for us to transact on them. We just get paid at settlement. So once the deal's done, we get paid. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we're no upfront fee and get paid at settlement. But also the handhold nature is what we adopt in our staff, to make sure that each individual is transacted individually, and that they're the forefront of our business, to make sure that that hand is held from start through to finish. And the biggest thing is communication, is to make sure that if there's no information to tell, that we're providing that courtesy to say, I've got no information. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to make contact, or we haven't been able to get this, but I am still chasing that for you. And more just about, people want to know what's going on, and it's making sure that they're aware of exactly what they're expected to do from start to finish, and that kind of transparency throughout that transaction, whether they deal with me from start through to finish. We're not a one-man band. We've got 10 staff employed with Ezy Step, so we have admin support team that are really crunching those wheels from start through to finish as well with us, to make sure that everything's happening in a timely manner, and that our clients are not either going to breach or terminate their contract, or not be unhappy with kind of not knowing where they're up to.
Yeah, I love that. I love the transparency, the communication side of things, and obviously those fixed fees and no upfronts really help out the buyers in a time where there seems to be a lot of cash flying out the door as well. So, yeah, all fantastic things. So, Renee, before we wrap up, I was wondering if you had like a top piece of advice for buyers and sellers when they're going through the conveyancing process.
Just be prepared, I think, is the biggest thing. Just get your ducks in a row before you start going to look. Get your finance sorted. Speak to the people that are going to help you throughout the transaction. So engage in a conveyancer or a professional to put them in advice to say that they want to be engaged, and that they want, once they find a property, would they be willing to act for them? So that we're expecting a contract to come through, and making sure that we can drop and roll for them. Time of the essence. Some things are going to 66Ws or auction contract, or want to lock under a call off, and making sure that we're going to be available for them, and making sure that the pest and building, and negotiating those terms in your offer. So subject to finance, subject to pest and building, and subject to satisfactory searches and inquiries is the biggest thing when you're negotiating as a purchaser. I guess for the vendor, it'd be really just making sure that that property is ready to take to market. So if you've got a pool, you need a pool compliance. It is a prescribed document. Making sure that if there is an occupation certificate or a building information certificate, there is a build within the last 7 years. Again, that is a prescribed document that needs to be done. So making sure that you're getting those documents and prepared, so that there's no hesitation with a purchaser when negotiating on that.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Renee, thank you so much for all this valuable information. I mean, it's such a complex part of the process, and to have someone like yourself to hold people's hand and sort of walk them through it is fantastic. So for anyone who wants to get in touch with you or learn more about EzyStep Conveyancing, how can they reach you?
So just jump on our website. There's a free, there's a quote or online quote that we can answer anytime. You can contact on our mobile or on our office phone. We're available pretty much all the time, or you can jump on our email and shoot us an email as well. Phone, email, or give us a call is perfectly fine.
Fantastic. Thanks again for joining us, Renee. And until next time, take care and happy house hunting.
Thank you.
Thank you.